Assalamu alaikum and happy Friday, everyone! I'm getting a video out to you a bit earlier at the request of my friend Nadine. Hi, Nadine! And those of you who have been leaving lovely comments and requests for me to continue. And I do have a surprise for you. Due to the popularity of this book by David Walliams, I went out yesterday and I got two more. Billionaire Boy and Mr. Stink. So let me know in the comments which one we should start first. And of course, I do intend to continue reading with the fourth Harry Potter book, inshallah, very soon. I've gotten a little bit busier these days, but I will do my very best to keep posting regularly, even if it's not quite as often. So we left off with our friend Ben, who knows that Granny's a gangsta now, and the sketchy, creepy Mr. Parker, their neighbor, is on to them. They hit the tin, Granny did some really weird yoga, and odd, strange, peculiar events have abounded. So let's continue on and find out what happens with Granny and Ben. I hope it'll be something interesting. Alrighty, chapter 15 is called Reckless and Thrilling. When Granny had put her clothes back on, she and Ben sat down on the sofa. Granny, before Mr. Parker turned up, you were telling me there was one jewel that you never stole, Ben whispered. There is something quite special that every great thief in the world would love to get their hands on, but it's impossible. It just can't be done. I bet you could do it, Granny. You're the greatest thief the world has ever known. Thank you, Ben. Perhaps I am, or rather was, and stealing these particular jewels might be every great thief's dream, but it would just be, well, impossible. Jewels? There's more than one? Yes, my dear. The last time anyone tried to steal them was 300 years ago. A Captain Blood, I believe, and I'm not sure the Queen would be pleased. She chuckled. You don't mean the crown jewels? Yes, my boy. Ben had learned about the crown jewels in a history lesson at school. History was one of the few subjects he liked, mainly because of all the gory punishments they used to have in the olden days. Hanged, drawn, and quarters was his absolute favorite. But he also liked the breaking wheel, being burned at the stake, and of course a red-hot poker to the bum. Who doesn't? At school, Ben had learned that the crown jewels were in fact a set of crowns, swords, scepters, rings, bracelets, and orbs, some of which were nearly 1,000 years old. They were used when a new king or queen was crowned, and since 1303, the year, not the time, they had been kept under lock and key in the Tower of London. Ben had begged his parents to take him to see them, but they had moaned that London was too far away, even though it wasn't that far. To be honest, they never really went anywhere as a family. When he was younger, Ben used to listen in silent wonder to his classmates as they recounted their myriad adventures in show and tell. Trips to the seaside, visits to museums, even holidays abroad. The knot in his stomach would tighten when his turn came. He was too embarrassed to admit that all he had done during the holidays was eat microwavable meals and watch TV, so he would make up stories about flying kites and climbing trees and exploring castles. But now he had the greatest show and tell of all time. His granny was an international jewel thief, a gangsta. Except if he showed or told this, the old dear would be put in prison and they would throw away the key. Ben realized that this was his big chance to do something crazy and reckless and thrilling. I can help you, said Ben in a cool, calm manner, though his heart was beating faster than ever. Help me do what? Replied the old lady, a little befuddled. Steal the crown jewels, of course, said Ben. Chapter 16, N-O spells no. No, shouted Granny as her hearing aid began whistling furiously. Yes, shouted Ben. No, yes, no, yes, no, yes. This went on for a few minutes, but to save paper and therefore trees and therefore forests and therefore the environment and therefore the world, I have tried to keep it short. There is absolutely no way I am letting a boy of your age come on a heist with me, especially not to steal the crown jewels. And most important of all, it's impossible. It can't be done, exclaimed Granny. There must be a way, pleaded Ben. Ben, I said no, and that's final. But no buts, Ben. No. N and O spells no. Ben was bitterly disappointed, but the lady was not for turning. "I'd better go then," he said, despondently. Granny looked a little downcast too. "Yes, dear, you'd better. Your mommy and daddy will be very worried about you." "They won't be. Ben, home, now." Ben was sad to see that Granny was becoming like one of the boring grown-ups again, just when she'd started becoming interesting. Still, he did what she said. Apart from anything else, he didn't want to make his parents suspicious, so he raced home and climbed up the drain pipe to his bedroom window before rushing downstairs to the living room. Unsurprisingly, though, Mom and Dad hadn't been worried about where Ben was at all. They had been too busy planning their son's rise to dancing superstardom to notice he was gone. Dad had been calling and calling the National Under-12 Dance Competition hotline until he finally got through and secured his son a place. Mom was right. The competition was at the town hall in just a couple weeks' time. There was no time to lose, so Mom had been working every waking moment on her son's love bomb outfit. "How's the rehearsal going, boy?" asked Dad. "You look like you've worked up quite a sweat." "Fine, thank you, Dad," lied Ben. "I really am getting something really spectacular together for the big night." Ben cursed his runaway mouth. Something spectacular? He'd be lucky if he didn't fall over and knock himself out. "Well, we can't wait to see it. Not too long to go," said Mom, not even looking up from the sewing machine as she stitched a row of 100 red sparkling hearts down the side of his lycra trousers. I'd kind of like to practice on my own for now, Mom. You know," Ben gulped nervously, "until it's completely ready to show you." Yes, we understand," said Mom. Ben sighed with relief. He had bought himself a bit more time, but only a little bit. In a couple of weeks, Ben was still going to have to perform a solo dance routine for the whole town. He sat on his bed and reached underneath for his stash of plumbing weeklies. Flicking through an issue from the previous year, he saw that it contained a feature entitled A Short History of Plumbing that focused on some of London's oldest sewage pipes. Ben frantically turned the pages to find it. Eureka! There it was. Hundreds of years ago, the River Thames, on the banks of which the Tower of London is situated, had been an open sewer. Technically speaking, that meant there was a lot of wee and poo in it. Buildings along the riverside simply had big pipes leading from their toilets straight into the river. In the magazine were detailed historical diagrams of various famous buildings in London, showing where their old sewage pipes connected to the river. And Ben's finger ran down the article. Yes! A chart of the sewer pipes at the Tower of London. This could be the key to stealing the crown jewels. One pipe was nearly a meter wide, big enough for a child to swim up, and maybe big enough for a little old lady, too. The article also said that when the plumbing systems were modernized and proper sewers installed, a lot of the old pipes were simply left where they were, because it was simpler than digging them up. Ben's head spun as he thought about what this meant. It was possible, just possible, that there was still a huge pipe leading from the river into the Tower of London. And that most people, apart from very keen plumbing enthusiasts, had forgotten it was there. Ben wouldn't have known himself if he hadn't been a long subscriber to Plumbing Weekly. He and Granny could swim up the pipe and get into the tower. Mom and Dad were wrong, he thought. Plumbing can be exciting. Of course, it was a sewage pipe, which wasn't ideal, but any poo and pee in it still would be hundreds of years old. Ben didn't know if that was a good or a bad thing. At the moment, he heard a creak in the floorboards and his bedroom door flew open. His mom burst in, holding a big piece of lycra that looked ominously like his love bomb outfit. Ben quickly concealed the magazine under his bed, which made him look incredibly guilty. I was just going to get you to try this on, said Mum. Oh, yes, said Ben as he sat on his bed awkwardly, his heels pushing the remaining Plumbing Weeklies out of sight of Mom's prying eyes. What's that, she said. What did you hide when I came in? Is that Nuts magazine? No, said Ben, swallowing his guilt. This looked way worse than it was. It looked like he was hiding some kind of bad magazine under the bed. Don't worry, Ben. I think it's healthy to express an interest. Oh no, thought Ben. My mom's going to talk to me about girls. There's nothing embarrassing about being interested in girls, Ben. Yes, there is. Girls are gross. No, Ben, it's the most natural thing in the world. She's just not stopping. The dinner is nearly ready, love, came a shout from downstairs. What are you doing up there? I'm talking to Ben about girls. Mom shouted back. Ben was so red that if he opened his mouth wide enough, he might be mistaken for a postbox. What? Cried Dad. Girls, shouted Mom. I am talking to our son about girls. Oh, right, Dad shouted back. I'll turn the oven off. So, Ben, if you ever need to bring, 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 bring. It was Mom's mobile phone going off in her pocket. Sorry, dear, she said, placing the handset to her ear. Gail, can I call you back? I'm just talking to Ben about girls. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. She hung up the phone and turned to Ben. Sorry, where was I? Oh, yes, if you ever need to have a little chat with me about girls, then please do. You can trust me to be very discreet. Chapter 17, Planning the Heist. For the first time in his life, Ben skipped to school the following morning. Through his love of plumbing, the previous night he had discovered that the Tower of London had a weakness. The most impregnable building in the world, where some of the country's most dangerous criminals had been imprisoned and executed, had a fatal flaw, a large sewage pipe that led directly into the river. That ancient tube would be his and Granny's way in and out of the tower. It was quite a brilliant plan, and Ben's body couldn't hide its excitement at this amazing discovery. That's why he was skipping. Now he couldn't wait until Friday night when his mom and dad would once again pack him off to Granny's. Then he would be able to convince the old lady that together they really could steal the crown jewels. Ben would bring along the diagram in Plumbing Weekly of the Tower of London's sewage systems to show her. The two of them could stay up all night and work out every detail of the most daring robbery of all time. The problem was that a whole fat week of lessons and teachers and homework stood between now and Friday night. However, Ben was determined to use the week at school wisely. In his IT lesson, he looked up the crown jewels and memorized every detail on the webpage. In history, he asked his teacher questions about the Tower of London and exactly where in the building the jewels were kept. That would be the Jewel House. Fact fans. In geography, he found an atlas of the British Isles and pinpointed precisely where on the Thames the tower is situated. In PE, he didn't accidentally on purpose forget his kit like usual. Instead, he did extra press-ups so his arms would be strong enough to pull himself up the sewage pipe that led into the tower. In maths, he asked the teacher how many packets of Rolos you could buy with 5 billion pounds, which is what the crown jewels were said to be worth. Rolos were Ben's absolute favorite sweets. The answer is 10 billion packets or 24 billion actual Rolos. That's enough for a year at least. And Raj was sure to throw in a few extra packets for free. In his French class, Ben learned how to say, I know nothing about theft of, how do you say, the crown jewels, I am but a poor French peasant boy, in case he needed to pretend he was a poor French peasant boy in order to escape from the scene of the crime. In Spanish, he learned to say, I know nothing about how you say, the crown jewels, I am but a poor Spanish peasant boy, in case he needed to pretend he was a poor Spanish peasant boy in order to escape from the scene of the crime. In German, he learned to say, well, I'm sure you get the idea. In science, Ben quizzed his teacher about how you might be able to penetrate bulletproof glass. Even if you got into Jewel House, removing the jewels was not going to be easy as they were kept behind glass that was inches thick. In his art class, he made a detailed scale model of the Tower of London out of matches so he could role-play the daring robbery in miniature. The week absolutely flew by. Never had school been so much fun. Most importantly, for the first time in his life, Ben couldn't wait to spend time with his granny. By the end of school on Friday afternoon, Ben felt he had all the data he needed to put the daring plan into place. The story of the theft of the crown jewels would be on TV news for weeks, on every website, and emblazoned across every front page of every newspaper in every country in the world. However, no one would suspect that the thieves were in fact a little old lady and an 11-year-old boy. They were going to get away with the crime of the century. Chapter 18, Visiting Hours. You can't stay with Granny tonight, said Dad. It was 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon and Ben had just got home from school. It was strange that Dad was home so early. He usually didn't finish his shift at the supermarket until 8. Why not? Asked Ben, noticing his dad's face was dark with worry. I'm afraid I've got some bad news, son. What? Demanded Ben, his face darkening with worry too. Granny's in hospital. A little while later, once they'd finally found a parking space, Ben and his parents went through the automatic doors of the hospital. Ben wondered if Mom and Dad were ever going to find Granny in there. The hospital was impossibly tall and wide, a great monument to illness. There were lifts that took you to other lifts, Miles-long corridors, signs everywhere that Ben couldn't comprehend. Coronary care unit, radiology, obstetrics, clinical decision unit, MRI scanning room. Confused-looking patients on trolleys or in wheelchairs were being wheeled up and down by porters as doctors and nurses who looked like they hadn't been to bed for days hurried past them. When they finally found the wing Granny was in, right up on the 19th floor, Ben didn't recognize her at first. Her hair was flat on her head, she didn't have her glasses on or her teeth in, and she was wearing not her own clothes, but a standard-issue NHS nightgown. It was as if of all the things that made her Granny had been taken away from her, and she was now just a shell. Ben felt so sad to see her like this, but tried to hide it. He didn't want to upset her. "Hello, dears," she said. Her voice was croaky and her speech a little slurred. Ben had to take a deep breath to stop from bursting into tears. "How are you feeling, Mom?" asked Ben's dad. "Not too clever," she replied. "I had a fall." "A fall?" said Ben. "Yes, I don't remember much about it. One moment I was reaching in the larder for a tin of cabbage soup. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the lino staring at the ceiling. My cousin Edna called me a number of times from her nursing home. When she couldn't get an answer, she called an ambulance." "When did you fall over, Granny?" asked Ben. "Let me think. I was lying on the kitchen floor for 2 days, so it must have been Wednesday morning. I couldn't get up to reach the telephone." "I'm so sorry, Mom," said Dad quietly. Ben had never seen his father look so upset. "It's funny, because I meant to call you on Wednesday, just for a chat to see how you are," said Mom, lying. She had never called the old lady in her life, and if Granny ever called the house, Mom couldn't get off the phone quick enough. "You weren't to know, my dear," said Granny. "They did all kinds of tests this morning to see what's wrong with me, x-rays and scans and the like. I'll get the results tomorrow. Hopefully I won't be in here too long." "I hope so," said Ben. There was an uncomfortable silence. No one quite knew what to say or do. Mom hesitantly nudged Dad and mimed, looking at her watch. Ben knew hospitals made her uncomfortable. When he'd had his appendix out 2 years before, she had only visited him a couple of times, and even then it made her sweat and fidget. "Well, we'd better be off," said Dad. Yes, you go," said Granny, with lightness in her voice, but sadness in her eyes. "Don't you worry about me, I'll be fine." "Can't we stay a bit longer?" piped up Ben. Mom shot him an anguished look, which Dad clocked. "No, come along, Ben. Your Granny will need to go to sleep in a few hours," said Dad, as he stood up and readied himself to leave. "I'm quite busy, Mom. I'll try to pop over in the weekend." He patted his mother on the head like one might a dog. It was an awkward gesture. Dad wasn't a hugger. He turned to go. Mom smiled weakly and then pulled a reluctant Ben across the ward by his wrist. Up in his bedroom later that evening, Ben determinedly sorted out all the information he'd gathered from school that week. "We'll show them, Granny," he thought fiercely. "I'm going to do it for you." Now Granny was ill, he was even more determined to do it than ever. He had until tea time to plan the greatest jewel theft in history. Ooh. Granny is sick. Mom tried to talk to him about girls because she thought he was looking at a teen girl magazine. One of those little magazines your sisters read that's really boring and about fashion and clothes and makeup. Oh, goodness. Mom tried to talk to him about girls. Mom doesn't like hospitals. So much weird stuff is happening, and now poor Granny is sick. What do you think is going to happen next? Do you think that Ben is successfully going to be able to break into the Tower of London and steal the crown jewels by himself? You tell me in the comments down below. I hope you guys are having a great weekend, and I will see you 3B on Sunday and the rest of you in my next video, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brush your teeth, listen to your parents, and be good.